Hi, and welcome to another podcast with Hanaz Writers Limited. My name's Charlotte, and I'm a Year 2 teacher. I've had experience working in a nursery for children aged 0 to 4 years old. And if you haven't heard any of these podcasts before, then be sure to check it out on Hanaz Writers YouTube and Spotify channels. So in today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about jokes and how comedians use language to create funny puns and make us laugh. So jokes, why are they funny? Well, to start off with, here's a joke. A man sued an airline company after it lost his luggage. Sadly, he lost his case. Did that make you laugh straight away, or did you have to think about it for a second? If it made you pause and think about it, the last part of the joke probably clicked into place and then made you laugh. It is a bit of a cheesy joke, but it's a joke nonetheless, and it plays on the word for the case. Because the first part of the joke is a man sued an airline company after it lost his luggage. And this makes you kind of think about lawyers making a case for him. He's going to be suing the company, the airline company, and the lawyer might then take them to court. So the second part of the joke with the punchline, sadly, he lost his case, makes you pause and think about the last words. You were already thinking about the lawyer, and the word case then just froze you. And because this is the one word that can be used to describe a lawyer who's making a case to sue the company. And then case also means suitcase, which is the case that holds the man's luggage. And then that's when the laughter appears because, you were surprised by the last word. Sadly, he lost his case. And you think of both of them. So you think, so the lawyer lost his case. And he also lost his case, his luggage from the airline company. And then because you were surprised by the joke, then you find it funny. So then you laugh because that's the response. So the thing with this joke is that for it to be a hit with everyone, for everyone to be laughing at it, there is the assumption, though, that everyone listening to the joke knows what a lawyer is. And then they know the words that are used for them to bring people to court, which is called a case. So the lawyer creates a case to bring the company to justice, and they make their case to the judge. And then that is what then makes you laugh because you're thinking about case that the lawyer is making. He lost the case, and you're also thinking about the case of him losing his luggage. And if this assumption, now the assumption is that everyone knows what these words mean. If someone doesn't know what a lawyer is or what they do, then the words that you've used in the joke associated with their job, the words used with the luggage and the case, also the word luggage, people need to know what that word means. And then the joke probably doesn't make them laugh. And someone would have to say, I have to explain it to them. And you get some of those people who just kind of look puzzled and they're like, was that a joke? Like they didn't get it. So then you have someone who did get it have to explain why it was funny. So when telling jokes, comedians are actually quite good at this. They come up with the different types of jokes that they have for their set, especially if they have a gig and they're doing a one-man show, then they have to come up with lots of different types of jokes. And they have to work out what the punchlines would be. And they know that not all of the jokes would be a hit, not all of the jokes will be funny, but they say it anyway because they want to see. I mean, it's kind of like they're testing as well to see if they are good comedians. They're testing to see if they can make jokes and they can make people laugh. And when they come up with their jokes, when they're thinking about them, and they need to be thinking about what the punchlines would be, especially if they're creating or trying to create like new jokes. So then they work on their timing and they tell their jokes and they work out when to pause in their speaking and then when to hit them with the one punch or with the joke, the final bit of the joke to make them laugh. And they try to work out how long do I leave the space or the silence between my first part of the joke and my second part of the joke. Because you have to leave a little bit of waiting time for the audience or the listeners to understand what you've just said. Because remember, if you're just throwing a lot of jokes out at once, you could be saying 5 jokes at one time, and the audience and the people listening are still just kind of reeling from the previous jokes, especially if you said something and they didn't quite get it, and you could notice that the reception isn't there, and they're not laughing straight away, or they're not laughing after a beat, and then you realize, that joke didn't land as I thought it did, or that joke didn't make it, or wasn't as funny as I thought it would be. And comedians have to bounce back from that, so their jobs is quite difficult because they need to have that immediate reaction. They don't have that immediate reaction, then it means that, that joke was rubbish, okay, but at least they know they can move on and they can do the next joke, and hopefully that one will land and people will like it. So comedians get quite good at this, and they have to work on it, and not just like making things up. Well, they are making things up, like they tell their stories, but they try to tell their stories in a humorous way. But they do have to think about when to tell their jokes, what kind of jokes to say. They have to think about what their audience is like, who are they talking to, and what the knowledge of the audience might be. Sometimes when comedians visit a new country or a new place, they have to go out and sightsee. They go around the country where they're based, and they just go and they make observations because they need to. They need to see what is happening around where they are. The people around them are doing things, and they have to see what is the norm. What's the normal thing for these group of people in this country to be doing at this point in time? So then they people watch. They might go to a coffee shop, or they might go to the shops themselves, and they go and see and look at different things. They look at food prices, maybe advertisements, and they just try to make observations, and they see what things are like. So let's say if you go to America versus Australia, you get very different types of signs, you get very different types of food, you get very different types of animals, and different types of behaviors as well, because depending on the weather, in Australia it's very warm, it's very hot, people are not wearing jumpers. In America, when the winter hits, people are in jumpers and they're dressed up, and they people behave a certain way, or they do different things, and they act in a certain way. So they really do have to think about that, and they have to work out what's normal for the country that they're in, where they're doing their gig. Once they've got that down, then they can start talking about this during their set. Remember, if they're doing a set, it's like for an hour long, so they have to talk about something for an hour. Of course, they can talk about their life or their family or friends and just make it up. They're not going to tell the whole story, but they'll just make things up and say, oh yeah, my girlfriend told me this, da-da-da. But they could also then talk about your country and say, oh, and when I went to the shops, I saw this and that. And, then it will it helps to make them a little bit more relatable, helps them to be a bit more receptive, helps the audience to be a bit more receptive of what they're going to say next. So they also then want to make the audience laugh. So they have to check that what they're saying has the desired effect, making people laugh. And a good comedian is able to make as many people laugh with what they say. Comedians then have to rehearse what they say. So they take time to think about what they're going to say, and they may place the emphasis on different words. They make pauses longer, shorter, and then they wait for the time to say their punchline or say their words, and then it's just somehow the jokes work. So I'm just going to touch on a few British comedians who are actually quite good at this. If you've ever seen any comedy shows or one comedian's gigs, then you might know or recognise a few of these names that I'm going to throw out there. And these British comedians, I've kind of highlighted them because they're good at this kind of humour. They're good at this kind of humour. They are good at using these kind of jokes in their sets, and jokes just basically anywhere. They had the one-liners. So these comedians include Jimmy Carr, who is featured in 8 out of 10 Cats, but he also has his own stand-up comedy shows. And then the following comedians are featured in Mock the Week. If you've ever seen it, it's a British kind of TV show where they get a group of comedians together and maybe some celebrities they talk to them about things that have been happening during the week, and they look at news events, things that's happening in the world, and then they talk about it in a kind of humorous way. And during this show, there is I can't remember the name of the bit, but there's a part at the end or towards the end of the show where they get all the comedians to talk about a topic, and they kind of talk about it in a humorous way. So then the following comedians, whose names I'm going to say, they're quite good at picking up on the topic and then talking about it and making people laugh. So we've got Milton Jones, we've got Stuart Francis, Gary Delaney, and Hugh Dennis. And these guys are actually very good comedians. They have great one-line jokes or two-line jokes. They're very good with their delivery of it and their punchlines. If you've ever seen Mock the Week, then I would suggest Googling it, go on YouTube and have a look. And these are just a few. I've only named like 4 or 5 British comedians. You can do a quick Google search for more if you want, and you can just Google these guys as well. You can just look on YouTube or just type in Mock the Week or 8 out of 10 Cats and you'll get all the videos for sure. They'll just pop up. So that's all for this podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Let me know, what's your take on comedians and their one-line jokes? Do you think you can make jokes yourself with 1 or 2 sentences? Do you think you had the right timing? Let's leave a comment below. So just before I go, here's one more joke for you. I was wondering why the ball was getting bigger. Then it hit me. Hopefully that just made you laugh. So if you enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to subscribe, click the subscribe button below. You can hear more podcasts with Hanaz Writers on their YouTube and Spotify channels. You can also follow Hanaz Writers on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or as it's now called, X. Their handle is @hanaz.writers. Thank you for listening, and until next time, bye!